last weekend. That was last Friday. Well, Iglesia is my name, and like I said earlier on, if you're a father looking for some stability, you want more fulfillment in life, or better yet, you are a single man, matured man who has been displaced from work, this stream is equally for you too. It's something I started 4 weeks ago, and it's going to launch in a couple of days from now. 7th of August is just around the corner. So, like I said earlier on, continuing from where I started last week, you know, I gave the story of how I was offered a role in a porn movie, which I turned down, and I gave you the reasons. In case you didn't see that, you could watch the part 1 later on. But then, in a nutshell, I stated that something that was just in me that was bigger and better than the offer, although the offer was mouth-watering though. But then, just 2 words will explain it. Well, I will call those 2 words self-worth. You having self-worth. You know, there's a reason why it's called self-worth. It's a phrase, and it's called self-worth because no one can give it to you. It comes from you. That's why it's called self-worth. And self-worth has to do with respect for self and respect for everyone around you. So for in my own case, I had to have respect for myself, respect for my late father, respect for my family, respect for my friends, and respect for each and every individual right now watching me whose dream is tied to this project. I have to honor each and every one, because if I had said yes, then unconsciously, simultaneously, I'll be saying no to the successes of others. You understand what I mean right now? So that aside, in the next 10 minutes, approximately 10 minutes, I want to see this short excerpt. It's a documentary on how outsiders, I'll use the word outsiders, they were actually immigrants and refugees, how they actualized their dreams in the face of rejection. This was way back early into the 20th century in the United States of America. Now, these guys, they did something tremendously well. And one way or the other, each and every one of us, we have actually viewed, should I say, their work. When I say their work, is the fact that they are industry pacesetters. They were trailblazers. They were pioneers of a multi-billion-dollar industry. Little did I know when I was a child, little did I know that this industry was pioneered by immigrants and refugees. But in the next 10 minutes, we're about to unfold the story, the background story about the industry. Just relax. The industry is a popular industry. And when you get the full gist of this industry, you now have a healthy perception of what the future is going to look like beyond COVID. Yeah, the Olympics is on. Yes, COVID has taken the shine off so many things. So many people have lost their jobs, and so many people are resigning. If you saw the last couple of episodes I streamed earlier on, the mass resignation. So as we get closer to launch, 7th of August is just a couple of hours away. We are trying to tidy up things and getting the whole stage set for you. So let me just take you straight into the short documentary, and I'll be back to wrap things up so that I could, go speed things up at the other end. All right, okie dokie.
These images conceal memories. Beneath Hollywood's familiar stories lies a hidden history of persecution and murder which haunted a small group of men, not American cowboys, but Jewish immigrants. This is the story of the founders of Hollywood, the story of the idea that became their America and ours.
What is America to me?
Modern America first saw light on a Hollywood screen. It was largely the product of 6 movie studios established in the 1920s and run for over 30 years by a group of Jewish immigrants. They had strikingly similar backgrounds.
All of these men who founded Hollywood were born within a 500-mile radius of one another. And all of them wound up roughly within 15 miles of one another in Los Angeles. One could say that the American dream was really born in Eastern Europe.
At the turn of the century, movies reflected the vision of America shared by Thomas Edison and the other men who invented the film industry. Most of these old stock Protestants saw film as an amusement for the working classes. Adolf Zucker believed that to attract the middle class, one had to change not just the theaters, but the films. Bypassing Edison, he imported from France this film, featuring a famous stage actress. He premiered it in a Broadway theater. Not wanting to depend on Europeans for quality films, Carl Laemmle and the other Jewish exhibitors began producing their own films. Edison decided that the Jews had overstepped their bounds. To shut them out in 1908, he organized a producers' trust that declared a monopoly on film production in America. 7 years later, Edison's trust would lose its monopoly in the courts. But in 1912, to escape Edison and the goons he sent to enforce his control of the industry, the future moguls headed west to the orange groves of California. Here they found immediate success.
Now, why did they move to California? I believe that they went there because California was a raw social environment. And although there was a social system in place, it was nowhere near as sophisticated and nowhere near as entrenched as the social hierarchy in Boston or New York or even Chicago, where these moguls came from. So coming to California, they realized that they could create their own social environment. They could create an empire of their own, not only on screen, but within their own lives and their own social environment. And that's precisely what they did.
Following Laemmle by 1920, Harry Cohen, Zucker, Goldwyn, Fox, and Mayer had set up their own studios, Golden Shtetls, where each was clearly in charge.
These guys were ruthless. They used women. They treated stars brutally sometimes.
Why do I run it? Because I got horse sense, goddammit. Showmanship! And also, I hope you told you this, I am bigger and meaner and louder than any other kike in this town. Did you tell him that, Lou? And I don't mean my dick is bigger than yours. It's not a sexual thing, although you're the writer, you know more about that. Coffee?
Jack Warner was considered a primitive, told terrible jokes.
From beginning to end, the executive had the primary input into the picture and supervised every aspect of production, over and above the fact that beyond any individual picture, it was the executive who created the entire studio apparatus. Every producer who worked there, every director who worked there, every writer who worked there, and every star who worked there was part of the larger system that was created by the Hollywood Jews.
I'm not sure that there was an, quote, American dream before the Jews came to Hollywood and invented it. what you had was a westward movement, and you had the idea of freedom, but you didn't have what we have today, which is a popular culture that creates dreams. That's the dream factory.
They created their own America, an America which is not the real America. It's their own version of the real America. But ultimately, this shadow America becomes so popular and so widely disseminated that its images and its values come to devour the real America. And so the grand irony of all of Hollywood is that Americans come to define themselves by the shadow America that was created by Eastern European Jewish immigrants who weren't admitted to the precincts of the real America.
In the 1920s and 30s, movie houses became temples of the new Hollywood religion. Jewish values made kitsch. 75% of all Americans went to the movies at least once a week.
This kind of movie-going was religious because it had to do with worship. It had to do with the screen being larger than you were, and you being in awe of what you were looking at, and feeling a certain reverence for it. And so there was, maybe you could say, a bogus spirituality, but it was a spirituality still that was believed in.
Actors became the gods and goddesses of the new American religion.
Innovation getting cheerfully mobbed. It's frenzied friendship, frantic fandom. Here she comes, the star.
And where there are new gods, there must be new idols. So the studio heads began a movie guild with the lofty title of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. It was Mayer's brilliant idea to create the Oscars, where the movie moguls could honor themselves by giving each other awards. In this way, they went from being a group of immigrant Jews to award-winning American producers.
The whole notion that Hollywood pins itself on is intermarriage. The whole idea of inter-ethnic romance. Now, why do they do that? First of all, because love is a very democratic ideal. It knows no borders, it knows not riches, it knows not tradition, it knows simply the matters of the heart. In addition to that, when a Jew can marry a non-Jew, particularly part of the establishment culture, that's really a wonderful indication of how far up into society Jews have come.
The Hollywood Jews may have wanted to marry into white America, but when it came to music, Jewish composers looked to black America. Harold Arlen, the son of a liturgical singer, or cantor, became one of the foremost popularizers of the blues.
Jews served as messengers, in essence, of black culture. They took it, they consumed it, they integrated it into their own cultural repertoire, and then introduced it to white America that was essentially willing to listen to Jews and to partake of what Jews had to offer in a way that they never would from blacks.
One of the things that made American films so exportable is that anyone, anywhere could identify with so many of the themes of American movies. One of which was the idea of the outsider, which was a Jewish thing. Jews being outsiders, making films about outsiders. You see this even in monster pictures. I mean, King Kong. There's a film about, an outsider. And yet, it's the monster, if you want to call King Kong that, with whom the audience sympathizes.
Carl Laemmle was an outsider. He resembled an elf. Not surprisingly, Universal's films often championed marginal beings who were persecuted like the Jews of Europe.
Yeah, that's just it. Now you're seeing the clip there, sharing the history of Hollywood, how Hollywood started by immigrant Jews. These are people predominantly coming from Eastern Europe, coming from the back of the First World War. After the First World War, they were refugees. They hopped on the boats, got into America in quest of the American dream. But then what they met in America was a far cry from their hopes. But did they give up? No. They decided to put themselves together and create the America which they dreamt of. And they did it so well to the extent that the American public keyed into the dream that was created. And that is what we have till date. People still come from all corners of life and all walks of life across the globe trying to get into America. But one thing that the documentary did not mention, which is part of the story of Hollywood, was the fact that the pioneers of Hollywood, they sold their license to the present crop of Hollywood practitioners. So the people, the key actors today in Hollywood, they were not actually the pioneers. The likes of Paramount Picture, MGM, and all whatnot, Disney, you just name it. They bought the license from the early adopters, who were the pioneers, and those were predominantly migrants and refugees from East Europe and all whatnot. So what we're looking at here, the fact that this industry started after the Spanish flu. Now you see where we are going to. It started after the Spanish flu. That was in the 1920s. The war just ended, and you know the world was going through a lot of commotion as a result of the Spanish flu. But then that same era, this industry was born. Get the point now. So the world is going through a pandemic right now, and you have different governments and economies on the planet splurging out money, trying to cushion the effect of the pandemic. People beginning to reassess their lives. People begin to reassess their choices. And you equally have people who are struggling. They don't really know what life is going to be like beyond the pandemic. So as a result of this, I came together with a bunch of guys and we decided to set up a platform which I'll be launching as the Visionaire on my birthday, which is August 7th, just a couple of hours away from now. One thing you have to know about me, just a little brief before I leave, I got to run. It's the fact that I've been a pioneer. My primary school days, I was one of the pioneer pupils in my primary school. My high school, I attended three different high schools. One, I was a pioneer. I attended three higher institutions. One was a college, two universities, which one of the universities I was a pioneer. Now, coming down here, I've pioneered different groups back home in Nigeria, and I'm here in Australia, launching this platform too. I'm one of the pioneers. In fact, I'm the brain behind it. My journey down to Australia is a pioneering journey too. It's a journey of a pioneer. The system I used in getting into Australia, I'm one who pioneered it. So there's a whole lot you're going to be learning, getting off my experience, my journey through in life. And if you are here in HAP, you're watching me from HAPS TV, you could comment on it, probably the replay, so that I could reach out to you in subsequent stream, because as from 7th of August, the streaming is going to change. But subsequently, if you feel you're going to be part of this, then you could comment and I'll reach out to you and it could be featured in the platform. We could do something together collaboratively anyway. And if it's from Facebook land or YouTube land, feel free to comment, because we are getting to the thick and thin, to the meat and potato of the whole thing. All right. I'll be back, not Friday this time around. I'll be back on the 7th, that's Saturday, and then I'll give you details of how things are going to be. Thank you for watching, and I see you on Saturday. So remain blessed. Remember, stay alive. The COVID Delta variant is spreading. Right now, the report here in Sydney, they say it could hit about 1,000 daily. Just like, wow, this is getting really critical anyway. But then When there is life, there is hope. See you at the top. Have a lovely day.